Welcome to Shifting Perspectives on Autism. My name is Vicky Westra, and this is a show where we talk to people within the autism community who are true shifters, and we believe that shifters are going to shape a new future for those in the autism community. And today I have Jim Rathmann. Jim, so happy to have you here today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So you are in the autism community because you have a son with autism.
I do. My oldest son, Trevor, he's 17. He'll be 18 next month, which I can't believe we're already there where he's going to be 18. But yeah, he was diagnosed at 4 years and 5 months.
Oh, wow.
He was diagnosed with autism. So
okay, well, we share that because our daughter was diagnosed at the age of 4 also. And she's a little bit older than Trevor. She's 24 today. So I feel the same way as you, that age of 18 came really quick.
Literally you blinked and it was there and you're like, what happened? Can we go back sometime? But
yeah, so true. Well, before I get a little bit into your journey with autism, I looked at all the information about your background, and you have an amazing background. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that first, and then kind of lead up to, how your life unfolded to the point you're at today. Sure. But so just going back, I want to know one thing, that you used to play football at LSU. And I only mentioned that because one of my best friends went to LSU and her parents were both professors there.
Nice.
So tell me about what happened after you left college.
I was very fortunate to go to LSU and play football, and, was on a national championship team with Coach Saban, and, just a lot of experiences. And, you learn a lot from such a great coach like that, just about life in general, and just how hard they work and the dedication it takes to everything that you do. When I finished playing college football, I got into the law enforcement. I worked local law enforcement there right on the outskirts of Baton Rouge in an area called Livingston Parish.
Okay.
I did uniform patrol, undercover narcotics. Eventually I got into the detective division and basically worked violent crimes, homicides, and just crazy crimes that are out there that exist. Wow. And then eventually made my way back into the Army. And the reason I went back into the military, one, I wanted to serve as an officer. It was very important for me to do so. I had served and enlisted before I went to college, but I really went back in because at the time I needed help and I needed additional services for my son. Okay. And the Department of Defense was able to at least provide some of the important things that my son needed, like the occupational therapies and just the different things that needed, physical therapy, speech therapy. And so I was able to get him a lot of those services.
That's awesome. So then you actually had your son when you were in the military?
I had my son when I was enlisted. So he was born in 2003, April of 2003. And I got out of the military just a few months later. And ended up going and playing football and so on. And then, ended up getting into law enforcement, and he was diagnosed. So.
Wow. And I want to note that you're a decorated Army veteran as well. So. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And then,
I served with a lot of great people. I know I got a real nice prestigious award for the things that, was able to do overseas. But I will tell you that you're only as good as the men and women that you work with in the military. And my hats goes off to every single one of them all across the world, past and present.
Oh my God. So. Thank you so much for your service. My family migrated from Cuba. And so they came to this country for the freedom that we get to experience here. So it's something that I've never, ever taken for granted. It's like the freedom that we have, the privileges that we have, and the men and women like you that serve to allow us to have that freedom is just, so much appreciation for you.
Well, thank you so much. And
yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you. And, your family, lived that American dream, right? They came over and got to have that freedom. That's awesome.
Absolutely. They made the most of it. They took advantage of all the things that this U.S. provides us. They worked, they expanded, they had a family, they put us through school, just all the wonderful things, that, and they always loved being here. They loved their home country, but they just couldn't live in that environment. And so they really always appreciated this freedom that we have. So, well, with that, and then you went on, Secret Service, you were assigned to Obama and Joe Biden. So what an interesting path you have traveled on, right?
It definitely is. When I was in Afghanistan, it just so happened that President Obama was going to be coming in, and I was out on an outpost that was, not a very bad area, but I happened to travel to the big airfield and Kandahar airfield at the time. And when I got there, I was there for a briefing for a future mission that was coming up. And that happened to have some Secret Service people showed up because the president was going to come in and do a quick speech and leave. And I stood in line for Timmy Hortons coffee. They had Timmy Hortons right there on the Kandahar airfield. And literally right in front of me were a couple of Secret Service agents, and they turned around and started talking to me and were telling me, you should really apply. And I did. Well, and then eventually deployment ended. I went through the whole process. I got hired, and I got a really good assignment. And to be honest with you, it's been that was a great part of my life, was being able to work United States Secret Service. I mean, it's not every day you get to see the President of the United States and stand right next to him, or such close proximity to the most powerful person in the world.
What an amazing thing, right? I only experience it through the movies that I see, of course, Secret Service movies, but I just think that's amazing. So, well, congratulations. And I know today that you kind of left that, and you're kind of an investigator now, and doing private investigations for individuals and companies, right?
Right. So what I do, I'm an investigative consultant, and I try to bring closure to a lot of families and some of the really most challenging cases that are out there. And so I review a lot of cases, a lot of documents, and try to bring closure for them. But I do a lot of it as well for television now. So, I was featured on Jill Exotic, Tiger's Lies and Cover Up. There's a few more projects we're getting ready to film now. So very excited.
Well, I saw the show, so I thought, wow, that was one of the big watch shows. So you were right in the middle of all of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So very, very cool. Well, let me go back then and find out a little bit about your journey with your personal journey, but love to find out about your journey with autism. And again, your son then, Trevor, was diagnosed at the age of 4. So take me back to that time and tell me, when you first got the diagnosis, what was your experience?
I kind of had an inkling that he may be autistic, and I'm just going to rewind a little bit before he was diagnosed. Okay. One of the first things I noticed about Trevor, sweet, loving kid, but he used to do a lot of stimming. Okay. And, he would pace back and forth, and then he would jump up and down and flap his hands and things like that, and burn off that extra stimulation. That was kind of the first indication that I had that, well, that's a little odd. I'm wondering, was there something there? What gave it away to me, though, was my son had an obsession for those like Hot Wheel cars. Okay. And he had an entire cage, 50 or 60 of them in there. And he had a habit of lining all of them up in a perfect line. Mm-hmm. And he would get down and use his peripheral vision and make sure everything was perfectly in line. But then I started to notice that they were always placed in the exact same pattern. So every car had its own spot. And, I took a picture of it. And, at the time he was 3 years old, and he would go back to it. And it's always set up the exact same way. So one day I decided to take one of the Hot Wheel cars and switch it. And when he went to go get his juice cup, he came back from getting his juice cup, looked down, knew exact 2 that I switched, picked them up, put them back. He went down and used his peripheral vision and got everything in perfect line. And I said, okay, I think my son has autism. Yeah. And that's what led me to start bringing him to a specialist to start being evaluated.
Okay. So you had already heard about autism then, right?
I did. Being in law enforcement, they started giving us some classes back then on some identifiers with autism, which I think that's really important, especially in law enforcement, because, their mental capacity may not be to have age. Like my son, He's still interested in a lot of movies that you would watch when you're 8, 9 years old, even though he's about to be 18. That's just kind of where what he really likes to watch and what makes him feel good. Well, they teach us those kind of things in law enforcement. So that kind of teaching actually led me to kind of look a little bit into like, is there something here? So that was the first indication.
Okay. Yeah, because when I got the diagnosis for our daughter, now granted it was a little further back, but at the time autism was not on my radar at all. I knew that there was something different going on, and because she wasn't really on track in terms of her, typical development, I kind of suspected the same thing. Something's going on here, but when I got the diagnosis of PDD, NOS, autism, I really didn't even know what that was. So for me, then it was a process of really doing research and, finding out what it was. And I don't know what your experience was, though, when you first found out. How did you feel about that?
Well, when I first found out, for me, my gut was already telling me it was going to happen. I think when you hear it as a parent, naturally, you're like, you're kind of concerned. That lasted for the first few hours. But then, for me, I think it was just from some of the research I was doing and just some people I reached out to was, it's okay. Just because he's diagnosed with autism doesn't mean that it has to be this, become a major crutch in his life to where he can't do what it is that he wants to do. We just have to find what it is that he likes to do and focus on it. And so for me, I always wanted to include him into everything that everyone else was doing that was age appropriate. He wanted to go off and play on his own, but eventually got him around other people and he became a little bit more social and would interact in the ways that he needed. And just, would push him to excel at the schoolwork and figure it out. Now he is great when it comes to math. Let me just tell you, this kid can do math all day long. But then he struggles in other areas. So it's help him where he needs it and push him to where his strengths are. And we just continue to build on that. But I felt like if I treated him like he's like everybody else, then he's not going to know. I don't want to treat him like he's special, because then he can use that every day of his life to go, well, I have autism, and start using that to his advantage. And I didn't want him to do that.
Well, I mean, you were way ahead of me, because I use this emotional chart quite a bit to teach, and we've got the zones, the red zone, which is worry and anger and fear. Yellow's kind of neutral, but then we've got the green zone, and initially those first few years were red zone years, or just like not understanding what was going on, not getting her behaviors. Did you have any of that, though? Did you have
absolutely?
Gosh, I don't understand what's happening here.
Absolutely. In the beginning, before he was diagnosed, you start to kind of wonder some of those things, and then obviously as he ages, you have some moments where you're like, I don't understand how you don't get this, but then you kind of have to pull yourself back and realize that sometimes it takes some reinforcement, and they're hypersensitive. I don't know if your child's hypersensitive. I know mine is in certain ways. So if I raise my voice, it shuts him down. So I can't. I always have to like, hey, Trevor, I'm proud of you. You're doing a really good job. Let me explain it to you like this. And so that puts his guard down, and then he listens to what I have to say. So with my other children, I don't have to do that, right? But I have to realize that with Trevor, it takes more. And it's not that he can't get it. It just takes a little bit more time for him to understand, but he can absolutely understand.
Very cool. Well, that's really good. I mean, so it sounds like, from early on, you were just kind of more accepting. And I think it's so great that you learned so much about the diagnosis even beforehand, that you already had some understanding. So it sounds like you were just more prepared for that.
Yeah.
So tell me about then Trevor's journey, like in school. I guess what were some of the biggest challenges you faced as he was growing up?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's really been really interesting to see where Trevor is now in comparison to where he was. So I went into the military again. The Department of Defense was providing those services. Unfortunately, his kindergarten years, especially in first grade, I was not a happy camper when I found out, but the teacher did not want to include Trevor with everything else because he wasn't able to grasp the knowledge like everybody else.
Yeah.
So she would just tell him to just go into the corner and just, draw on it with chalk and whatever the other kids. I was so upset about that. So that's where it kind of started. As he got older, yes, he was falling behind. They do the best they can with the IEPs and so on. Eventually, I'll just say when he got to beginning of fifth grade, sixth grade, sixth grade, they had this school called Access Charter.
Okay.
And Access Charter was very helpful because all the kids that are there are on the spectrum. Okay. They're just at different levels of it. Even they do the best they can. It's unfortunate that they're going to need to be able to move at the slowest. The person's the slowest pace. So if your child is more on the higher end of the spectrum, they get the work done, but then they've got to wait a couple hours and then they can continue forward. The biggest breakthrough for my son, and I will forever be grateful for the school and for these teachers specifically, is at Hope Charter Legacy High School, which is located in Ocoee, Florida.
Okay.
I will tell you that Miss Yoakum, Crystal Yoakum, and her husband started the school. They are the biggest blessings ever. Michelle Anderson has been with my son for years. There's been so many teachers. I feel bad if I don't mention the name, Miss England. I mean, there's so many that I hold so dearly to my heart because they said, I bet you if we get your son here at the school and we start working with him, we can push him forward. We have ways, we have techniques, and I bet you we can make him grade level. Wow. When my son started 7th grade there, he was at the reading level of 3rd grade. Today, my son reads at a 10th grade level.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
He does about 60, 70% of his day in mainstream. So I'm super thrilled.
We celebrate that, don't we? Yeah, those are achievements. Those are, yeah. Well, I just found, for us, it got to a certain point where we were all about like, let's find the best resources that we can for Gabby. And we did. Along the way, we found, early on, we found a school that was almost all, applied behavioral analyst, ABA therapist. And it made a huge difference for our daughter. So I'm a big proponent is get them in the right place for them. Because not every place is understanding our autism population and doesn't really know, how to really work with them. And so finding a place like what you did, like what we did, and we put it out there because we went backwards after we had a good school. We went back to a school that really didn't understand, and we quickly realized, oh my gosh, not in the right place. Then went back to, putting her in a high school program that was same thing. We just felt the same way. Like, thank God that we've got these, beautiful people that really care and want to do right and want to help our children progress. So.
Absolutely. With this Hope Charter Legacy High School that I mentioned, the Yoakum family, their son was on the autism spectrum. And so they knew a lot. And so when they began creating this school, they implemented it where they wanted to be able to assist those that had, were on the spectrum like my son. And I am forever grateful for them. So if anybody that's listening that's in Central Florida area, Charter Legacy High School, one of the greatest schools ever for my child. He's, it's funny, I go pick him up and he's walking down the hallway and, kids are high-fiving him. And, he's made a lot of friends and they treat him like family. And it's just been such a blessing.
Yeah. And that's such a key component is having a place where they feel good about who they are. They can make more connections, So many times we teach young adults with autism and help to get them prepared, for their next step. And so many times they come in and they have such, really difficult stories of not feeling good about who they are and not, or being bullied at school. Our population tends to get bullied because they are different.
Hmm.
And so, even though I feel like, hey, sometimes those experiences are there to serve you somehow.
Right.
Wish you hadn't gone through that, but now that you did, how can you use that,
Right.
keep yourself moving forward? But so good that your son is having some good experiences there. So when are you thinking he's going to graduate?
So based on his IEP and what you're allowed to do, you can actually hold him back twice,
Okay.
according to the IEP standards. And that was best for us to do just so he could get caught up to speed. So he repeated fifth grade and he repeated seventh grade.
Okay.
And ever since doing that, it allowed for that gap to be closed. And now he's doing mostly everything that a sophomore in high school. So he'll graduate in 2 more years. He already knows what he wants to do. It's actually, he used to take pictures with my phone all the time and everything was always perfectly centered. So my wife and I decided to buy him his own digital camera and he started taking pictures. Well, now it's gotten to the point where he has this big Canon system with all the different lenses and he really enjoys two things: sports photography and taking pictures of animals. So he does all of my middle child's baseball team and the organization. He takes photos for them. He
Wow.
loves, he goes out in the field. He has the stand. He does that. And then whenever we can go to Animal Kingdom or something like that, he takes just remarkable pictures. So just going to keep pushing him for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a key point I want to make to those that are listening in the autism community. We truly believe here at Autism Shifts that every individual with autism has a unique ability. They may not have discovered what that is, just maybe because they just haven't had enough experiences. But that's a great example with your son Trevor, that you were able to connect to something that he was really passionate about early on. And the great news is that if they're passionate about it, they're so dialed in, they're so focused on it, they really build a lot of expertise in it, which serves them for their future. So, oftentimes I have parents that say, oh gosh, my child is only wanting to, he's very obsessed or she's very obsessed with this, and sometimes it's obscure, like, elevator repair,
Right.
But I say, well, gosh, if they're really dialed into that, imagine where that could lead in the future. I mean, that's, equipment repair, electronics, so all of that, all of those things are clues for us of, what the next steps might be. And so excited to see, obviously, being a shifter, that you figured that out so quickly that, hey, let's just maximize his time in this. That way we can keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes some of those obsessions that the kids have ends up leading to that massive breakthrough of what they want to do. You don't look at the obsession as it being a problem. Look at it as something that clearly motivates them. And that's kind of what I did with Trevor. He loved taking photos. And so it was just paying attention and saying, okay, let me go spend some time with him. When we'll walk around the neighborhood or go walk around areas or ride bikes to a certain area and, spend time in his world instead of trying to pull him into our world. And then that's really where it opens up the doors and you really kind of see what they like and what they don't like. And then, I just spent a lot of time with them and I love every moment of it.
Well, Jim, I'm just going to stop you there and say that is a huge key point in this, right? What Jim just said was, get into their world, stop to understand their world. And, I didn't do that early on. I was one of those parents. That's why I said it took me a while longer to shift and become a shifter, get into the green zone. But the more we try to fit them into our world and say, this is where you should be, this is how you should act, their world is so different. And I got the tremendous gift of, realizing that with a group of young adults when we started this program that weren't my child, and then I was able to see it more clearly. But the fact of the matter is their world is so different. But if we could just seek to understand them, seek first to understand, we would get so many insights about who they are and, where they're coming from. There's so many things that we misinterpret because we're looking at it through our lens instead of through their lens. And so if we were just to stop and go for the walk like you did with Trevor, go for a walk, find out how he's seeing the world,
Mm-hmm.
we would just have so many more connections with our children.
I agree. I think you summed that up beautifully. That's exactly the main key right there.
Gosh, it is. It is. So one of the things that I think people with autism are teaching us, they're a classic example of don't judge a book by its cover. We are
Right.
making so many assumptions by our visual senses. Sometimes what we see, we make all these assumptions that with the autism community go totally out the door, and
Mm-hmm.
I did the same thing. It was funny, but as I started this program, I saw one assumption after the next. It just showed me that is so not right, And
Right.
ultimately, I think the gift that it gave me was judge not. Don't judge. Don't judge people.
Yep.
You never know what's in there. You never know where they're coming from. And this population is more than ever, I think, more so than any that I've met, really cause us to take, a look at the judgments that we're making and the assumptions that we're making. And if we could just assume that it's all in there, everything they have, they understand everything, they come from a different perspective, they could teach us so many things. I think as parents and caregivers and the world at large, we really could benefit.
I agree with you completely. And, I think with all the things that you're doing, which is bringing so much awareness everywhere, it's really making people understand, and know that, yeah, there are a lot of children out there, there are a lot of adults out there that are on the spectrum. And just because they might seem a little bit different to the whatever considered the social norms doesn't mean that they're actually different. They just work in a different way at a different speed.
Yeah.
Every one of them is different, but they all have a special gift. They all will love unconditionally. You just have to willing to understand and be patient enough to see what those amazing qualities are.
So true. So if you were to say, hey, this is the biggest thing that Trevor has taught me, what would that be?
I would say a lot of it is patience. It takes a lot of patience when you have a child that's on the spectrum, but the patience is well worth it. And what Trevor showed me and has taught me every day is just how gifted he really is. I mean, he can do some things that I have no idea how on earth he figured that out. But for him, it's simple, and he's just taught me how to love and how to be patient and how to be understanding and how to, to view others. I mean, my goodness, I go out into the public, I can spot somebody that's on the spectrum right away and, try to be that person in the middle where somebody may not be understanding, but I can say, well, hold on, I know what this is.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so big. And Trevor's really opened up the world to me with all of that. And I love my son. We have such a great bond, and it's just amazing.
That's awesome. Don't you feel like that expands you as a human being, though? Like my husband and I always say, like, if we hadn't had this experience, we probably wouldn't be where we're at, as a person, as, understanding, this unconditional love that they teach you, because it's just like, accept people for who they are,
Yep.
like that is who they
Absolutely.
are. It's not about changing them. It's just about this appreciating them for, what they bring into the world,
Yeah, absolutely. It's just been such a blessing. I've been absolutely blessed to have Trevor. He's just such a great kid.
Beautiful.
It's just a ray of light everywhere he goes.
So how many kids do you have?
I have three boys.
Okay. So Trevor's the oldest, and then you have two sons that are younger than him.
Two sons that are younger. That is correct.
How has that been? Because Gabby was an only child. So we really, our 100% focus was on her. How's it been for you as a parent to juggle all of this?
Well, so my middle child is Ethan. Ethan's a superstar baseball player. Goes to actually the same school. He goes to the middle school and Trevor's in the high school of that Hope Charter legacy. Ethan, I will say, with Trevor being able to have a younger brother, he has somebody he can always talk to, somebody that's always around him. They they want to share the same room. They can have different rooms, but they don't want to. They'd rather be in the same room. They play video games. They interact often, and and they are still brothers, so there's still some tension every now and then.
That's normal.
But I will say that Ethan, I think him having an older brother that's on the spectrum has made him a very kind-hearted young man, and he's just very delicate in the way that he goes about treating his brother. And even when he sees other kids at school that, or in other areas that, whether they're Down syndrome or, autism or whatever the case might be, he has a very, very, very big heart for them. And he just does random acts of kindness for them on a regular basis. To me, I just look at it and go, wow, I'm blessed to have that. Now the other child is still young. He's only 3. So he's not there just yet,
yes.
but
what a great experience, though. And, I find that the sibling group is another big group of advocates for autism, shifters, because they grew up with a sister or brother on the autism spectrum. And, sometimes they have to go through their own things, with, maybe their sibling gets a lot more attention or, so they've got some things going on that helps them to grow and expand. But overall, I find more and more, I'm talking to more siblings that are just out there really advocating for, their brother or sister and the community at large. So
it's very special, Trevor and Ethan's bond too, because I told you my middle child there is a superstar baseball player. We're super proud of him, but he plays very competitive travel baseball. And what's great is that Trevor's included in that because he's the team photographer. He's also the photographer for the whole organization. So what's great about that is, whenever Ethan has his games, Trevor's there and he's taking photos. So sometimes he's able to go on the field and I go out there with him just so I can protect if a ball comes his way. But what's great about it is, Ethan gets happy and excited when he sees Trevor, and all the kids are high-fiving him when he comes by, and, they all talk to him. It's just like he's a member of the team. And he's always feeling included, and he and Ethan have a very special bond with that. Wow,
that's wonderful. Yeah, that's another big thing, is having a space where they can feel part of something, And, for our daughter, we've gotten her involved in as many things as we can. Her special talent is music, so we try to get her involved in as much music activities as we can. So that's another important thing, though, keep them involved in things, keep them engaged.
Absolutely.
And it seems like you've done a really great job at that,
Well, thank you. And, music seems to be very calming and soothing for those on the spectrum, too. Trevor loves music. So
yeah. Gabby has a great ear. She's like very eclectic. So no matter what the band is, it could be, a band from my time or a band, a current band. She is immediately, as soon as she hears, the singer or, the beat, she knows what band it is, so it's like, name that tune. We're always playing that with her. Gabby, who's this band? Who's this singer? And she's like always right there, so she's taking music lessons and, so we're the same. We don't know, where the path is going to lead, but we know that is one area of passion that she just absolutely loves. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So let me ask you then, what do you hope for the future? If you think about like Trevor, what's your biggest wish for him?
We've made him very independent. So I do believe he's going to be able to go and live on his own and have his own apartment. Now it might be in a community where he has a little bit of oversight. They have those kind of communities out there, or even a roommate. But Trevor's very independent. We taught him how to cook for himself. He cleans up after himself. He does his own laundry. I try to get him involved with that at a young age, so it became part of the normal for him. My goal from here is when he finishes, I believe we're going to probably put him in the Full Sail University or something like that to get him, more on the photography and the filmography, the aspect of it that he likes, and then hopefully transition him over to either working for the Orlando Magic or somewhere where he can do the photos and have a regular job and do those kind of things. And I think he's going to do an excellent job at it.
Oh, Jim, that makes my heart sing to hear that. No, that is a true shifter right there. So, the definition of shifters is, people who are opening up all the possibilities for their children, right? Not setting any limits on what can happen. Oftentimes fear, which is at the bottom of our emotional chart, keeps us from hoping for anything to happen. Because what if it doesn't? And, I always say, well, if we don't, hope and then even expect things to happen for our child, how are they going to, right? So, I talk to parents that says, oh, my child will never drive, or my child will never become employed or be independent. And I'm doing the same thing you are, I don't know where the path is going to lead. I often tell Gabby, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what's next, but it's going to be great. It's going to be aligned. It's going to be our next steps, your next step. And that's just such a key to being a shifter, is setting that expectation that of course you can do it. And I want to kind of end on this note: independence, teaching them, I hear sometimes from parents, oh, they can't do that. I want to do it for them. And parents, keeping your child, when you keep them from learning those things, you keep them from believing and moving towards that independence that they can take care of themselves. So start when they're young. We got Gabby started, way back when, probably when you did, Jim, in middle school. Start teaching them how to cook, how to do their laundry, how to pick up their room. They could be taught everything, because you're serving them, because you're getting them prepared for
absolutely
life. So
absolutely,
gosh, that is so beautiful. That is the perfect way to end this segment. I just been such a true pleasure for me to talk to you, because I just so enjoy hearing the success stories of, and I'm sure your family, just like ours, goes through the challenges too. We face challenges. I mean, it doesn't mean our life is always in the green zone, but the fact is that shifters are the ones that keep things moving forward for our autism community, right? And then Trevor becomes a shifter because he's a person with autism who's living his life on purpose, And that's another shifter right there, a person with autism, right? That's doing what they want and living their life the way they want to. And I tell you, that's what we got to create. When we see these unemployment rates high as they are, we celebrate that. And then he becomes an example to everyone else of what's possible.
Anything is possible. You just have to teach them and be patient. It'll come together.
And believe, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for taking your time today to talk to us and share your journey. And I hope that, for the folks that are listening, and especially those in the autism community, again, these are some examples that you can, look at and say, I can do that too. I can do some shifting here. I can do some things to help myself shift and kind of get into the green zone, so we can create more lives on the autism spectrum that are in the green zone. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today.
It was such a pleasure. And I look forward to following your journey, because it's so exciting.
Thank you so much.
Your website, by the way, is jimrothmanthecompany.com. So if anybody's looking for investigative services, I would definitely call you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Jim. Well, have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You do the same.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.